my live videos, and I wanted to just jump on and share a story for today. I've been trying to go live every day, so I'm back as I promised I would be. I'm just making all of the tech go live at the same time, which is actually probably the most challenging part of the whole thing. The showing up is fine. It's the pressing the buttons that I'm struggling with. I wanted to talk about the hardest lesson to learn as a business owner, because I'm someone who I would still say is fairly new to being an entrepreneur. I was about to say self-employed, actually. I think I've mentioned this a few times over the last couple of days. Self-employed is not a helpful term, is it? It's really not helpful, because it straight away puts us back into that mindset where we're an employee and that we have to work within a framework and that we have to charge in the way that we have to charge when we are employed. So there are some big money mindset things there that we can talk about another day. But I'm someone who's quite new to being an entrepreneur or self-employed. Comment of what did you call it? Let me know in the comments. What do you call it? Working for yourself. But basically making my own future is what I've been doing since 2016 or so. And it hasn't been an easy ride. It's definitely had its ups and downs. When I started to do this, I thought, I'm a qualified accountant. I've been doing this for my whole career. I must have had 15 years experience or so at that point of working in various accountancy roles. And I thought, how hard can it be to do some accounts, bookkeeping in my free time around my family, etc. Even if I was working without my children around, like, how hard should that be given the years of experience that I've got? But what I didn't realize is that employment, whatever I was doing in employment, first of all, was not completely irrelevant, but very, very different to what it looks like to be self-employed, because first of all, the kind of work that you're doing is different. But I also think that if I hadn't come from the background that I had, and even if I come from a background very, very closely linked to the business that I set up, i.e., if you're a bookkeeper watching this or an accountant, if I'd come from a practice background where the work day to day, the operational work day to day would look pretty much exactly the same as if I was in practice working for myself, self-employed, whatever you want to call it, the actual deliverable would have looked the same, right? But even if I just made that jump from working for someone else to working for myself, I still wouldn't have been prepared. And that's a hard thing when you realize, oh, this is not what I thought this was going to be like. That's quite eye-opening and quite scary as well, because we start out in business. I often see this graph. I don't know whether I'm which way around I am, whether I'm mirrored or not, but I'm going to assume you're seeing. I'm going to go from this side. I'm going to assume that you're seeing my graph from this side, like time being 0. I can't help it. I've got to draw with my hands. I've got to talk about graphs because I'm an accountant. But when I think about like the way we, when we start on our journey to becoming or to doing any change, actually my personal trainer, Steph Garside, talks about this a lot. So I'm going to borrow it from her, but I've also seen it described as the dip. There's a book by a guy called Seth Godin. If you haven't heard of him, go and look him up. He's got a book called The Dip as well, and it's a similar concept. So when we start out and we're on a journey and we're like, I'm so excited, I'm going to do this great thing, we start to get this momentum and we're kind of climbing up the graph, like everything looks rosy and we've made a decision and we're going to go for it. And we are kind of uninformed and optimistic, and we're like working our way up. And then we sort of see how tricky it is. Like there's something that gets in our way, or there's some kind of boundary, or there's some realization about our abilities or red tape or something. And then we kind of slide down and we get to this point where we're like, well, Seth Godin calls it the dip, when we're at the bottom of the graph. And so we've sort of gone up and then we've gone down, we're stuck in this dip. This is the point where lots of people talk about how small businesses fail in the first few years, etc., etc. This is the point where people often decide, am I in or am I out? And that decision point is the moment where you get this breakthrough. When you decide that you're in, you have the breakthrough and you make sure that you're in and you go for it. And that's a really exciting turning point when you have said, oh, do you know what? It is, I would rather the pain of making this work than the pain of this not working out for me. And then people are informed and then they start back up on that journey, but it's slower progress because they are considering things and they've got lots of other sort of information that they maybe didn't have at different times. Now, what I found difficult, why that was a hard lesson to learn, I suppose the lesson really was that there isn't a perfect one-fits-all solution. And being someone who loves numbers, bookkeeping, accounts, numbers, maths, making things balance, that is what that's what drives me. Not being able to see that clear black and white answer was actually really challenging. And I think that is the thing that was the hardest lesson for me. It was seeing that all the information and knowledge I had, all the work experience that I had, all the reasons that this should be really, really easy, actually didn't amount to this being very easy at all, because all of that background hadn't set me up for this path. All of that background, the education, the training, the education system, even the way we take professional exams, the way we're trained to be really good employees, it doesn't make us good entrepreneurs. And that's why when Joe and I work with bookkeepers and accountants in this community, we meet people who are struggling so much because they're really high performers when they're in a work environment, but they haven't got that accounting, they haven't got that skill set to allow them to thrive in that entrepreneurial situation, which is kind of what we'd have to expect. You know, like my children are at school, my children are being trained to pass exams at 7 and 5, and they're being assessed based on ability versus that person, but academic ability doesn't say anything about your creative ability. So we're not set up to be able to do this, and I find that really interesting. So I think what I had to let go of to be able to succeed, if you want to call what I've done succeeding, what I've had to let go of is the fact that I'm not going to get a black and white answer. I might not know something, and that's okay. The being okay with it is a really big change, because I think a lot of people in this profession will, I don't know how to describe it. I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth because this isn't anyone's words, but I would definitely say if I can't do something, I must be a failure. Like if I've got it wrong, or I don't know, or I don't understand, that must be a reflection on my mind, how capable I am, how able I am, my education, like how smart I am. But actually, it's not that at all. It's just that we haven't experienced that before, and there's so much of being a business owner that you have to experience to actually know what it's going to look like. You can't make decisions based on any like right information at the time because you haven't had any information before. So we've got to kind of be nicer to ourselves there. I think that's it. And when we haven't been sort of taught to try things and fail, or try things and experiment, and I see it like even now with the kids, with my daughter, really trying to push that like creative thinking and knowing it's okay, and knowing that there isn't really a right or wrong answer, and it just to say, oh, tell me about that, not, oh, well, was that the right answer? Like it's just having open conversations about, well, what could that look like? What could the possibility be? My husband was doing this great picture the other day with my daughter, and he was drawing a little line or a shape, and then I was drawing a line or a shape, and my daughter was drawing a line or a shape, and it turned into this weird like giraffe thing with a, I don't know, an umbrella, and I don't even know what was going on, but it didn't have to be a thing. And then I drew some raindrops, and I was like, well, that's an umbrella, right? And he was like, oh, I suppose it could be. And it's that. And I don't think that education, and particularly like business related education, the way it is at the moment, can teach us to do that. That's something we've got to learn for ourselves. So I'll wrap up. Hardest thing I've learned as a business owner is I won't know everything. I've got to be okay with that, because otherwise I'm just going to get into that dip and I'm not going to know what to do anymore, and then I'll take no action. And it's okay to experiment. I think if there's anything that's happening right now for us, there are so many opportunities for us to experiment with different things, and if you're not experimenting, you're quite possibly missing out on something, which brings me quite nicely actually to what Joe and I were speaking about tonight. We were in our community running our workshop about business strategy, and we were talking about AI, and we're learning about new technology, but we're also teaching on a platform which is new to us, which is buggy. Like, there have been issues. We had an issue this evening with people who were joining on their phones who could unmute themselves, even though, like, there were things about that weren't great. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to upload the video like raw as it is, because I think it's really good to see if someone like me, who would have been very, very uncomfortable 7, 8 years ago with getting something wrong or appearing to be a failure or not knowing something. This just shows, like, we can't know everything, and we've just got to, I suppose, be more comfortable with being uncomfortable. So if you want to go and watch it in all its glitchy glory, go and watch it on YouTube, but register for our event, which is happening this week. It's called Big Week, and you can register at bookkeepersevents.com, and then you'll get the link. You can come and join us, and we'll see you there tomorrow. Thanks for listening, and I'd love to know what you found to be a big challenge as a business owner as well in the comments. Let me know. Okay, have a great evening. Bye.